Everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I am delighted on this episode to be having a second chat with creator Steve Mattsson. Steve, thank you for jumping in, joining, and I have to ask about the background because this looks like a really interesting sort of texture behind you. So is this a real background? Is this digital or something that you enjoy zooming in front of?
Well, I last time we talked, I think I mentioned that I do a little acting, and these days a lot of auditions are done video. So got a
Ah.
little studio in the house that I've set up to do the video auditions, and so I got some nice lighting, and that's what you're seeing here.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, all right. I can appreciate that. Absolutely. I of course don't actually have books behind me. This is digital, so I can appreciate the use of the Zoom space. And it's a fascinating connection between enacting stories through comics and acting because I imagine you have to be keen on storytelling in either case.
Yeah, a lot of acting classes talk a lot about storytelling. You know, you have one little segment of a bigger narrative that you're working with. And so giving as much information as possible through your one or two scenes to help move the story forward is very similar to the storytelling in comics, where you got a panel and then something happens in between the panel, but then something else happens, and your mind fills in what goes on in between. You just
Mhm.
get those limited motion moments to make your storytelling points in both acting and comics.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the last time you and I were talking, we were also talking about a slightly different form of acting, which is teaching. It's kind of a performance all its own, and you were talking about, I believe it was a middle school teacher that inspired you, and I think you had a follow-up story about a teacher later on that also helped you kind of carry the creative path forward.
Yeah, one thing I appreciate about your podcasts is the emphasis on the educators. I owe a lot to the teachers that I had throughout my life, and the story I told last time was about a middle school English teacher that sort of inadvertently got me involved in reading comics, and so I owe her a lot for doing that. But then in high school, I took every art class I could possibly sign up for, including jewelry.
Mm-hmm,
And my
hmm.
jewelry teacher was a great artist and a really great teacher. And he had a huge comic book collection as well. He had early X-Men, early Avengers, big stacks of Mad when it was still a comic, Karl Barks, Uncle Scrooge's, lots of great stuff that he shared with the class. And I got to look through and kind of absorb. And so, as a teacher, the jewelry stuff I didn't take forward into comics very much, except, there's elements and principle of design in all kinds of art. But, his enthusiasm and, his comic book collection was really, really hugely influential. Got to learn about a lot of the older artists, the stuff that wasn't out when I was buying stuff off the 7-Eleven spinner rack.
Hmm, hmm.
So
Yeah.
Mr. Bjorgi, he's still out there, and really, I still keep in touch with him. It must be 40 plus years. So,
Awesome,
really
awesome.
happy to have met his acquaintance. You just don't know the effect teachers have on your life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this upcoming week is Teacher Appreciation Week, so this is the perfect
Perfect.
time to be saying this.
I appreciate my teachers. Yeah.
Likewise, absolutely. I've had lots of great supporters along the years, and firmly believe I would not be doing what I'm doing without the help of some good teachers. So hopefully, I've carried that forward. Um, but absolutely. Uh, so I was going to ask a little bit. Last time we did kind of a general view of your work. I was going to ask a little bit about the creative process in terms of writing and setting up stories.
Well, that all goes back to reading. We read widely and deeply. If you want to get into comics, I hope you're reading a lot more stuff besides comics. I mean, if you want to write Daredevil, you have to know, his background, but you probably want to spread your wings a little further. Maybe read some magic realism. Some Jorge Borges is one of my favorites.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just get out there and experience and how to tell a story. And even books where you don't think you agree with some of the choices the author made, that's still educational. So read widely. And then I try to think, it's like, okay, how would Borges, approach a Daredevil story? And it just takes you to a different area, makes you think through it, maybe bring a little bit different something to Daredevil that people hadn't seen before. So that's, as a creator, experience other creations. Look at art, read widely. Um, that's what I have to say.
I love that. And Marquez, really enjoy Marquez, and I think it's called The Old Man with Wings. It's a really
Okay.
great story. And Angela Carter. So now I'm thinking about bringing those elements into comics, and you're absolutely right. There's all sorts of room for storytelling and for elements to weave together that way.
Yeah, I think there's, you could do the Iliad and the Odyssey in comics. That's a natural, but it's
Mhm.
all kinds of different places where you can bring different bits and pieces in, and some people will notice it, and other people will be like, "Wow, this is exciting! I hadn't experienced this before."
Yeah, yeah. And then of course they can be like, wow, that Homer guy, he really stole from that. But it's a little the opposite, little the opposite. Um, so you worked on a particular series that I was going to ask about that I don't think we mentioned the last time, and I believe Carl Kiesel was part of this series, Paul Pelletier was part of this series, and of course that's Superboy and the Ravers. So I'm curious about what that particular experience allowed you to do, and how you kind of got to make a mark in the world of Superman.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Carl had had a lot of success with the rebirth of Superman with his Superboy character,
Mhm.
and he and Tom Grummett were doing some really great stuff. And of course, if a business sees something that's popular, they want to recreate that. So the DC, in their infinite wisdom, decided they wanted to do a Superboy spin-off book. And by then, Carl was busy with some other stuff. He's a popular writer, and so he's doing a lot of different things.
Mhm.
And he asked me to help him create this new Superboy and the Ravers. It wasn't called Superboy and the Ravers then. It was just a new Superboy team book. And our point of view was, hey, what would a bunch of teenage superpowered kids do when they get together? It's probably not fight crime.
Mhm. Mhm.
What and so you have uh, you know adjuncts in the real world of boy bands and rock singers and that kind of stuff. And what do they do when they get together? They have fun and go to parties and go to movie premieres and that sort of thing. And so we thought, okay, and this was mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there. And
Mhm.
so the raves were big, and we thought, okay, these kids would get together and go to this rave, and of course, trouble's going to follow. There will be some fighting superpowered villains and that sort of thing, but this is the natural thing to get them together. I think the only direction we got was from our editor, Frank Pederisi. He said, I want one of the characters to be gay. Otherwise, we just had a complete blank slate. We could do anything we wanted with it. And so um, Carl had a character called Sparks that he wanted to explore her family dynamic a little bit more. And we picked a few pieces here and there from the DC universe, the Dial H for Hero H Dial, and one of
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
characters, Caliber, was from the antimatter planet Quard, but he was a juvenile delinquent, so he was a good guy on Quard because they're all evil.
Yeah.
So that was the switch, and then several brand new characters that we did from scratch.
Yeah, yeah. When you mentioned LGBTQ characters, and just brought back to mind the fact that that was beginning to happen in comics in the 80s and the 90s. I believe there was a character in X-Men that at least there was the opportunity for some diversity there to be part of the storytelling.
Yeah, DC had done a couple, but they were a little bit stereotypical, sort of
Hmm.
flamboyant gay, and so we tried to make this. Our character was Hero. He was the one who ended up with the H dial, and it was just sort of he was a character that happened to be gay, not a gay character. If
Hmm. I
that
like that.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember they used to explain, some of the black characters at Marvel, like, uh, you know, Black Goliath just happened to be black. The Black Panther was a black character.
Hmm.
If that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah,
Our
yeah,
character just happened to be gay, wasn't a gay character.
yeah,
Tried to
yeah.
be a little bit more subtle about it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot there to appreciate in the way that comics have kind of grown in that way too, as well.
Yeah, a lot has happened in the last couple of decades. That's true. Things do improve.
Yeah,
Every once in a while we'll see bad things going on in the world, but some things slowly improve. We gotta appreciate that when it happens.
yeah, absolutely. So I was going to ask about what you're doing now creatively, and it sounds like acting is part of that. So very curious to hear about that process and some of the work you've been able to do, as well as anything else that's got your creative attention at the moment.
Well, I think the last time we talked, we were just coming out of COVID and we were in the middle of the actors strike, so not too much was going on.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then I switched agents, so not too many more acting gigs since then. But I just did a modeling thing for Hoka shoes. I don't know if you're
Nice.
familiar with Hoka. It's a it's a big, thick, comfortable shoe that they're really getting market share now, and they're marketing for healthcare providers. And so um, did a little bit of modeling with some other models for nurse directing these Hoka shoes at nurses. So it's
Hmm.
cool. And then I just got a check out of the blue for a tire commercial that I did 5 years ago. So that isn't new, but the money spends just fine.
That is a good thing. That is a good thing. Now, I think we're coming up also on some anniversaries of some work that you've done as well.
Well, yeah, I mentioned to you that one of the things that keeps me engaged creatively in sort of the nerd sphere is a huge fan of the movie Buckaroo Banzai.
Hmm.
And we got the 40th anniversary of that movie is coming up this August. And for 25 years, a group of guys and I have been doing this Buckaroo Banzai fanzine, interviewing the writer and the director, cast, crew members, that sort of thing. And we want to do a really special issue for this August, the 40th anniversary. And it also happens to be the 25th anniversary of the fanzine. And I don't know how familiar you are with the movie, but at one point, a character holds up a prop Buckaroo Banzai comic book,
Uh-huh.
and you only see it on screen for a few seconds, but it's very clearly the artwork of Mike Kaluta, who I was
Uh-huh.
always a big fan of. And it's like a lot of people who are into comics and into that kind of movie spotted that. And so we've been talking with Kaluta, and hopefully, fingers crossed, he's going to do something special for that 40th anniversary issue of the Buckaroo Banzai fanzine World Watch One.
Nice, nice. Love it, love it. Um, no, I think you've been creating for a while, so I think there was also a story about the early days of Dark Horse that you were going to share. That's probably not
Yeah,
the best transition to that. But
that works for me.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So speaking of your creative history.
yeah, last time I think we spoke, I told you how Dark Horse had started here in Portland. It was just Mike Richardson and Randy Stradley, and
Hmm.
I started showing up at the office and doing stuff. There was no formal job interview or anything, and they just couldn't get rid of me. I kept showing up, doing things like production art and answering fan mail, opening letters, all that sort of stuff. And we once got this package from a kid named Rob Liefeld. He must have been
Oh
like
yeah.
19 years old,
Hmm.
and he had drawn
That guy. Yeah.
yeah, that guy. He did a fan drawing of Boris the Bear that we printed in Boris the Bear number 6. I don't know, this is like 1985 or something like that. And it turned out to be Rob's very first published work.
Nice.
which he's gone onward and upward from there. And then we also Dark Horse was also the first people who paid Rob to work. We were always looking for fill-ins for Dark Horse Presents, and I had like this really stupid 4-page story that we sent to Rob and said, "Hey, we need filler for Dark Horse Presents. We got this right now. We'll draw it. We'll pay you for it." And
Mhm.
so he turned in pencils for the 4-page story, and it was a really silly kind of gag where there was a wolf that turned into a man in the full moon, and instead of craving human flesh, he craved vegetables. It was just a dopey gag thing for 4 pages, but Rob had this guy sort of stalking this Red Riding Hood character, going after her bag of goodies for grandma. But
Uh-huh.
it was a little cringeworthy, sort of some of the imagery. And so thankfully that never saw print, but that I believe was the first thing that Rob ever got paid for.
Nice, nice. Foundational work in comics right there.
Exactly. Yeah. And he was lucky that his first thing didn't get published, and it wasn't anything that he did. It was the story had some serious fundamental flaws. So, but a lot of people aren't that lucky. You get to see everything, the growing pains and that sort of stuff. So
Hmm.
he got to have that hidden.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you're the second person that I've talked to recently. I was just talking with Randy Emberlin about Mike Richardson and Dark Horse, and it seems like that was a company and continues to be a company where kind of creative things can happen. And it sounds like they were really supportive of folks in the 80s and onward.
Yeah, Randy's here in Portland, Oregon too, and I actually did background inks for him once upon a time.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Super, super nice guy, very enthusiastic about comics, and Mike, Randy Stradley, Chris Warner were all kind of this group of guys, very, very, like I say, enthusiastic and super talented. And so it's
Hmm.
just a matter of time before they all got together and did comics. It was an exciting time, especially at that beginning. Now,
Yeah.
there's some business involved, but it was a great time. There, the creators came first with Mike, and appreciate him for that.
Yeah, yeah. And I also just interviewed Justin Zimmerman, who I believe is part of the Portland creative scene as well. So it seems to be a really good spot for creators.
Yeah, Justin and I have some weird threads of contact. I first met him at a networking thing for film professionals in Portland. He was a film professor at, I think, Portland State,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
a guy who had married my niece was one of his students. And my nephew-in-law, I guess, was using me in some of his student films. And Justin's like, "Oh, hey, I recognize you from Marshall's student films.
Hmm.
I'm Justin Zimmerman. Howdy." And then of course we see each other at Comic Cons and different things from time to time. So it's fun keeping in touch with him. He's another guy that has a wide variety of creative interests,
Yeah, yeah. Seems like
and he's an educator as well. So
that's right.
it's
That's right.
wonderful.
Full circle, full circle. It seems like there's really interesting connections between comics and this enjoyment of film, either making both or at least being inspired by film when creating comics or vice versa. So, and I'm a big fan of both of those worlds as well.
Yeah, in comics, if you're writing, you're pretty much writing just for the penciler. He's your audience,
Hmm.
and you have
Hmm.
to inspire him, and then his work is what the readers are going to see. If you're a screenwriter working in film, then you're writing for a whole cast and crew, and all kinds of people are going to have their input. And as long as you got people on your team that are seeing the picture the same way you are and have the same enthusiasm, then it's amazing. You get this synergy of all kinds of people contributing, but you lose a little bit of the individuality that you have between just you and a penciler.
Yeah, yeah, and that intense collaboration, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
The two of you have to be on the same page. Yeah.
absolutely. quite literally as well.
Quite literally.
Yes. Uh, well, Steve, I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate Boris the Bear, Night Thrasher, Superboy, the full pantheon of what you've worked on. Um, I always like to give space for people to share websites, social media spaces, and things like that. So glad to have you do that, and then we can hit anything that we might have missed.
So I'm on Facebook if you want to find me there. And remember, that's Mattsson with two T's and two S's.
Mhm.
Uh, my IMDb page, the same, Mattsson, two T's and two S's. I'm going to be at Comic Con International in San Diego this August as a fan. I'm going down there with my family, but if anybody wants to IM me on Facebook and hook up somewhere down there, I'm happy to do it. And the same with the Rose City Comic Con in Portland. I think that's in September. I'll be there with the family as a fan. But if you run into me, please come up and say hello.
Awesome. So, well, anything that we missed before we close?
Oh yeah, and that Buckaroo Banzai stuff, that'll be on World Watch One on Facebook. That's three
Fantastic.
different words, World Watch One. If you're interested in the movie at all or the work of Mike Kaluta, keep your eye out.
For sure, for sure. And I'll provide those links in the description. As always, great to talk with you. Glad to have you back anytime, and I appreciate the time.
Well, thank you so much, and good luck, and thank you so much for teaching Teacher Appreciation Week. You just don't know the effect you have on people. Like I'm still talking about teachers I had 40 years ago, and I'm sure your students are going to be talking about you.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind. That's very kind. It's my job to give them interesting stories at least. So hopefully they
Yeah,
have that.
terrific.
All right. Thanks so much.
Jason, thank you.